everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Dance Talk Realness, a podcast where we discuss all nuances concerning education and dance, because a danced experience is an experience worth talking about. I'm your host, Truly B, and I'm here with my awesome, as always, co-host, Daryl P. Hey. And today we are going to discuss the art of language in dance. This sounds so wild, but it came to me in like a fever dream. I clearly need more sleep. But what came to my mind when I say the art of language in dance, and I'm looking at my notes for those watching, because child, again, it was an actual fever dream. The importance of being able to articulate your thoughts, not only about choreography, but also about just regular teaching and life in general, which ties into grant writing. And then asking for what you need and deserve. And then this morning, the idea popped in of the separation, and I think this is primarily a Western thing, separation of verbal, mental intellect, and body intellect. So let's start there, because I've been writing all the papers and I just need to get that out of my life. So that idea of that separation, and it's not all Western philosophers and thinkers or blah, blah, blah that have pushed that separation, but it is a very Western concept of, okay, but the more important thing is the mind and like how you think, of which to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't care no more because I'm tired. But I would say language is over in that category. And so this is not to say that I think the mind, language, and all that is not important, because it is. But I think, especially when we're dealing with dance and looking at ways to continue to propel the field forward, I think we have fallen into, and this is just talking about in the States because that's all I have reference for, but we have fallen into that trap of continuing to perpetuate that separation. An example would be how I've heard many a dancer say this. I've said it before. It's like, oh, well, when I don't know what to say about something, I can just dance it out. Or I don't have the words, so I'm just going to. And it's like, okay, not saying that that's not a real thing. That's not a real experience, because it is. However, I would like to argue the point that why not both? And so I feel there are other trains of thought, schools of thought that do place value on both. I am not well versed in them. I will be. Give me like another year or so, because that's going to be in my research. But there's that coming together of those, because I don't think they should really be diametrically opposed, but they've been kind of situated that way. And so when I'm looking at myself as a dance artist, as a dance educator, as a dance scholar, all the things with dance, I need these words to be able to articulate these ideas and to continue to further not only my knowledge, but the knowledge of others. But on the same token, I'm not going to discount the importance of the body. And not only because it's dance, like I think just in life in general, the importance of bodily knowledge and awareness is important, but dance specific, it's like, dude, that's literally what we're doing, is we're operating through the body. So I think there is importance in finding the balance. But I don't think everyone works. There we go. That's the word we'll use. I don't think everyone actively works towards finding that balance. I think you would probably get quite a few people, I would say, that would agree that, okay, yeah, no, these are both important things. But the work of actually synthesizing them is like another step that I don't know everyone's willing to make that step.
Yeah. Yeah, I immediately thought of the very popular Martha Graham quote that is, "The body says what words cannot."
Mm-hmm.
And I've used that in my class, um, probably like on the first or second, at least within the first or second week of school, because I want students to start to understand the language of movement, right? And how um, there's moments of expression, um, but I do think that when people think about, especially like K through 12 dance, or at least 9 through 12 dance, and maybe its purpose. Hold on one.
Y'all that are just listening and cannot see what's happening. Daryl P is, of course, at work. We just be recording wherever he can get in and fit in. So continuing along that line, I don't know where he's going with it, so I'm just going to talk because y'all know me. I don't be editing jack out of these things. But to be fair, I am approaching this from a space of being PhD student right now, as opposed to 100% as educator. So I am in agreement with you so far because I definitely have used that quote with students
Yes.
before. And I would say I agree with it.
Yeah. And I think where I was going was that, especially in 9 through 12, is that I think it becomes like, oh, this class will be great because students can express themselves, and especially in populations where, if you think about the other disciplines, right, they take a little bit more. If you're at a population that struggles with, like, or has a high, maybe ESOL population, right, where like another language is spoken besides like the predominant language, I think you get into this moment where, like, well, this should be easy for them because they don't have to really do a whole lot of speaking or like written expression. Like, it's just dance, right? They can be able to move and that's it. And I think that's when you see that people really disregard the notion that, like, yes, we are asking people to express their emotions, themselves through movement and that movement language. But you also have to be able to articulate that with words. And I think people can better understand artists, young artists can better understand their movement, I think, when they can articulate what it is that they're doing, when they read about what it is that they are doing, or how they are, maybe impacting their audience, right? It's that, what is the word I'm looking for? It's that aesthetic. My professors in college would be upset that I all this, but like, basically, I'm looking for that art for art's sake.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that it's like, yeah, art for art's sake is great, right? That's fine. I think that's very valid. And I think that there's a place for it. But I think maybe just because in the society that we live in now and where a lot of the arts are going, especially within the last, I would say, 10 years, I think art has a little bit more meaning and a little bit more purpose. And I think art for art's sake right now, people aren't really, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here a little bit, but I also think that people who, am I messing up?
No, you're fine.
Okay. I also think that, I thought I was like, I think, on the tangent, I think people who, I think maybe more established companies are able to do that art for art's sake because people are going to come see it no matter what. And I think that there are more artists that are on the ground that I feel like are doing more meaningful art. But I think that's art that comes from being able to articulate where their art is coming from. Mm-hmm. And yeah.
I think, remind me to circle back to literacy tasks because you triggered something about that. But I think to that last observation, so art for art's sake, I don't know, Kant, Hegel, one of them literally just did a study session last night. So we're not gonna talk about how trash I am at studying. We're not gonna talk about that. But I think the issue that happens with art for art's sake is that people take that as it has no value or purpose. And that is part of why, like, the grassroots, the on the ground artists, like the smaller companies, that when they try to make art for art's sake, then it's easier to dismiss it because it's like, oh, well, you ain't talking about nothing. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just there. And I agree. Like, there is value in arts for art's sake. Like, I'm not saying that it's not, but there seems to be like this overarching feeling that, okay, but if it's not talking about something, then why should we care? But then when you get to like this big name company, they can do it and it can be appreciated for being art for art's sake. And so I have no answer for what that break is. I have zero for that. But
right. When have you made it to where like you don't have to say anything in your work? You can just make it and people be like, that was great.
Yeah, like I'm just like, oh. And I'm like, there's a lot of people who aren't, you know, the big name, internationally travel, who make awesome art, and not enough people get to see it. Is that what it is? Is it just that you need the numbers? Because that's dumb.
Yeah.
Hey, that's lame as hell, but I mean, okay, I guess. Yeah, no, that's lame as hell.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm like, because that's just because 1,000,001 people have come to see me does not vicariously mean that my work is better than yours.
Right. Or that now my work, well, you know, taking it back to just, you know, this prompt, right, of like the, you know, both the language of movement and being able to verbally, or, you know, to be able to script it or to verbally discuss it. I feel like I wonder if once you're in the game so long and it's like, you know, I don't know, where like people, you cultivate this audience where no matter what, you know, when you see it or what it is, it's like Alvin Ailey, right? Like Alvin Ailey, I don't know, you know, because I feel like and this is, don't take my black card. I feel like I haven't really seen a whole lot of Alvin Ailey work that isn't art for art's sake. It seems like and I say his work, like Alvin Ailey, like in his prime work, and I think any iteration or new work from that company, I see very little that is not rooted in some type of social justice or very Black experience, very cultural work. I mean, and maybe that's just what it is. And then I could go off on a tangent. Well, why does this company have, like, do they feel like that's what they have to do in order to be Alvin Ailey? Like what they just made art. Why can't you make? What was Appalachian Spring about? Graham, right? Like what was the social justice movement in that? Nothing. right?
Yeah.
That was, you had a beautiful piece of music that someone created for this beautiful collaboration between Martha Graham and Aaron Copland, and you have this really beautiful piece that's well known, but it's like
Yes.
that wasn't about anything, you know?
And
And so it's like, but it's taking it back, right? It's still about that because I mean maybe I hope I'm not redirecting the prompt, but because it does seem like it is about that, you know, being able to discuss and talk about work, and being that it's just doing work and moving and showing expression without having to really have the definition, right? The meaning, the what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, so many things are coming up.
it's okay. No, look, same here. Like a lot keeps coming up and then it leaves immediately. And I was like, oh, that would have been good.
Yeah.
But you raised the question for me then. So let me pose this to you because I don't know that I've seen it. Is it that Black dance has not really been given the space to not always have to have something like to say? Like everything that I can think of, it doesn't matter the style of dance either, but like Black dance, there's a message in all the things. I can't call one to mind where there's no message. I can't. I am trying. But no. And if that is true, and I'm not just tripping right now in this moment,
Mm-hmm.
then could that be because that space has not been, not even that, how do I want to say that? Not even that the space hasn't been opened, kind of low key though. Space hasn't been open. We haven't been allowed into that space. Or when we go into that space, it gets written off. I feel like that's a more accurate direction to question it. Like, because like usually, like when you're talking about like, oh, this is like a piece, Black dance, Black artists, Black dancers, whatever's making it Black. I have my own thoughts, but we're not going to go on that tangent.
Yeah.
Whatever's making this a Black, quote unquote, Black dance piece. When it has a very clear, direct message, you hear a lot about it. I don't know that I've ever heard a lot about any piece that didn't have a strong message. And then it's always like the sad pieces or like the struggle. And I'm like, y'all, we be happy though.
And now that I think about that, and like now it's like I talked about this with a friend, and like I couldn't put a name to what the issue is, but now I'm like, that is an issue. The thing that's really problematic now is for non-Black choreographers to utilize Black struggle in a piece. I also feel like that's not your story. That's also not your story to tell.
Yeah.
Because I've seen a non-Black choreographer want to I mean, it's one of those things that uplift I don't even know if it's the uplift, wanted to tell a story using all Black dancers. But I feel like maybe that's not your story to tell. And why are you, because it's one thing that like as Black artists, we have to be in this space where our work has to have this meaning behind it, right? And not only is it just us expressing ourselves, but it's us also wanting to articulate something else through movement that like you said, we don't get the space to then make work where you know, how we would articulate it isn't about a struggle. It isn't about it's not a storytelling. It's us expressing movement for movement's sake, and we
Yeah.
can call it that, and we can say that that's what it is. And for someone to say that was nice, that was beautiful, that was this, right? But I feel like as a non-black choreographer, to then to use that in a piece, not only are you not coming from a place where, like, you know, maybe being fully aware of that struggle or what you're doing, I also think that, like, if you're wanting to lift black artists, black voices, provide that space that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's not there. Provide that space for black artists, black dancers can perform something, can create something that it isn't about anything. It isn't like, yeah, that isn't about, I was going to say, well, maybe it's not about nothing, right? But no, it's just beautiful movement.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I first of all, I agree. That's not their story to tell. And I've known people to argue that point and try to sell it and package it as the, oh, well, you know, it's uplifting, they're trying to shine light on it, blah blah blah. And I'm like, like you said, first of all, just give us the space to do it. That would be great, thanks.
Yeah.
Or, you know, don't, and when we take it, you know, just shut up and let us do that. That's also
Right.
a great option too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the disconnect for a lot of people that subscribe to that thought of there's no issue
Mm-hmm.
with them telling those stories is that I'm like, you can tell a story about struggle without it being about the Black struggle. And there is this commodification of Blackness that
Mm-hmm.
people really like to just scooch on past. And it's like, no. Okay. Could I, in theory, do a piece about the Holocaust? Yeah, I could. I can do whatever the hell I want to do. I
Yeah.
can. But, well, first of all, I'm not interested in doing so. Not because I don't know about it, wouldn't want to learn about it. It's not even that. I'm just like, that's not my story to tell.
Right. Yeah.
It's just not. I was like, but I can, again, have a whole discussion, a whole piece around some type of hardship without me saying, okay, I'm going to make it look like all the dancers are in a concentration camp and I'm going to, you know, give them these tattoos on their arms to emulate what was happening there. And I'm like, that shit's unnecessary. And if I went out and did that, I would be crucified. Without question, it would happen. And people can try to say that that's not true and they're a fucking lie because it is true. We all know that. But when it comes to Blackness, people are just like, oh, free for all. And it's like, but could you not? I was like, because it's actually not a free for all, guys. Like, it's actually not. So 100%, that ain't their story. And I think there's something in there. I don't know what it is, but there's something in that ability or that non-Black body's ability to utilize language, be it verbally or through the movement, that for some reason on a Black body, it becomes different.
Right. And we talked a little bit about that in another episode too, about like the how political the Black body is and how the Black body moves. It can be seen differently than a non-Black person. So I'm just saying, I agree. I think that's true. And I don't know. I think that's true. But I wonder what that says more about, like, I don't know, what does that say about our audience? What does that say about just world of dance in general? That like, you know, how we cast dancers or how we cast people to do certain pieces. You know, like, would you like would an all white? What would an all white, or not even all white? Let's say just a non-black. What would a non-black company school look like doing Revelation?
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, as opposed to a black, as opposed to a black company or school emulating that piece, right? Like, it would have different meaning for sure. Um,
To that, because again, I think the fever dream is because I'm like studying for exams right now, and I have to keep rereading my paper, and it's a lot happening. And so, to that, I am very much in the camp of it is a completely different experience seeing non-black bodies perform that type of movement.
mm-hmm.
And so I think, and maybe this is going to come up more in research, but I think what I am kind of getting at, kind of looking at with that is the importance of, so when we think of kinesthetic empathy and how we're going to receive seeing that
Mm-hmm.
performance,
Mm-hmm.
is the actual connection that the dancer has to the movement, to the music, to the idea behind all of it. Because I think that is where it starts to read differently. Because I'm like, movement wise, if your body is trained to do the movement, then your body can do the movement.
Mm-hmm.
So that part, I'm like, yeah, ain't no thing.
Yeah.
That's just being trained. Connecting to music, I'm like, people connect to music that's not originally of their culture. Like that happens often.
Yeah.
That ain't a thing. But when we're talking about having like a fully immersive type of connection to, I guess I would call this historical treatment, historical ways of being, historical ways of existing. I think we're going to approach things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And that's not only racially, but age-wise, because a dancer who actually lived through, like, let's say, Jim Crow era, they're going to move differently from a dancer today.
Correct.
Period. So I'm like, there's a lot to be said for just the actual lived experience and the I'm arguing for communal what's the word? Communal unconscious, shared unconscious. There's something to be said for what the role that all plays and how the actual performer is connecting, and then audience reading it. We're seeing how they connect.
Right.
So I always argue that it would be different. Like a less politically, socially charged statement. It's really not. As I get ready to say it, I'm like, I don't know, I'm lying. I'm sorry. But if you watch like, I don't even remember the name of that show. I don't remember what channel it came. Maybe MTV, child, I don't know. But like, was it America's Best Dance Crew? Was that the name of that show?
America's Best Dance, yeah.
It was like hip hop in the things, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm making sure I'm not making stuff up. I was like, did I just fever dream all that too? I don't know. But let's say if I have a group and it's like all Japanese, I'm just gonna put that out there.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say they're given the exact same choreography as all Black group.
Mm-hmm.
Depending upon where each group is from is also a thing, but we're just going to go off of some generalizations right now. There is, in my experience and in my viewing, and maybe it's just because it's shaded by my perspective and lived experience, but there is a different quality of movement,
Mm-hmm.
and they can have both be clean,
Mm-hmm.
tight. Like that part's not up for debate. They're both clean.
Yeah.
But there's a way that the movement gets interpreted
Mm-hmm.
through their body that now is impacting how I'm able to receive it.
Right.
And that's not saying right or wrong, or no, they shouldn't be allowed to do this form. Like, it's not that.
Right.
But it's that how the body is talking.
Mm-hmm.
Like when someone has an accent, I'll use myself. There are just certain words, country. Ain't nothing I can do about it. And the longer I talk, the more you hear it. And so it's like the longer you watch certain bodies, the more you see some of that stuff come up.
Right.
And so that I think is a part of the languaging of the dancing body.
Mm-hmm.
And to try to loosely tie it back, because I gave up. there needs to be, well, shit, this is an example of there needing to be a way to verbally language it also in order to talk about it and to get to it. And again, because this is in my dissertation intro, I was like, I'm not saying that being able to write about it, being able to talk about it and explain it like this is more important. I was like, because I disagree. I don't think it's more important at all. But it is a nice supplement, a nice plan B to say, okay, yes, the body is doing this. This is how we can discuss it. These are the things that impact it. Yeah. I just keep calling it plan B. And every time I think of plan B, I'm just like, is that the phrase we want to use? But that's what I have actual written in my dissertation. I was like, well, that's what we're using now, because I'm just like, But it is, I'm working on me, child. But it is very much more valuable in Western society to have written documentation and to be able to talk and discuss. Whereas non-Western, I believe there's more value in the experience in the oral transmission.
Yeah.
And so I think my big thing is that there is, again, coming back to that idea of why not both? Like, why can't there needs to be a point of balance there. And I will say I see that balance not as 50-50.
Right.
It can be sometimes, but it's like on a spectrum is how I look at it. Yeah. And even if you're looking at like the old measuring scales, that sometimes they just like point to one, and they just kind of shift just a little bit, and it's still technically balanced.
Right.
Like it's not one side all the way down, one all the way up.
Right.
But there's like little gradient parts right in that balance. And I think that balance is not like the ground zero, but it's like, okay, we have like from 5 to -5 up in here. We got some wiggle room, and that's where we find our balance. And sometimes we might be more on the positive, sometimes more on the negative, but we're still within this range of not allowing one to completely consume or overwhelm the other. And I think that was my whole point of talking about this. I get fever dream. So potential insanity But yeah. Yes. So why not both? I think that's my question for the day. Why not both? All right, awesome. We will probably touch on this again, because we're both doing like hella studies, so like stuff is just like bleeding over. But that was my random thought that I was like, this would be a good discussion, and I was right. It was.
Yeah, that was good.
All right, thank you all for joining us here yet again at Dance Talk Realness. Be sure to like, comment, follow, subscribe, all the things, where all the places you can find us. I don't remember them, so just look us up. Let me do better. Facebook, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Podbean. I think I covered them that time. If you have any comments, questions, or observations for us, or any topics that you would like us to cover, be sure to drop us a line, and we look forward to bringing you some fresh new content next week. We'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.